Hello there, and welcome to Gaming Chat. Today I want to talk about the Harvest Moon video game series. I just love it so much, but whenever someone asks me, why do you like Harvest Moon? It's just farming. I think to myself, well, I don't honestly know. I've never really took a good look before at why I really enjoy doing the actions of farming and sending off crops and just doing these basic things that you could do in real life instead. Why do I enjoy this more in the game versus doing it in the real world, and so on? So I actually was thinking about it, and I was like, well, what if I turned the letters Harvest Moon and I came up with a word that corresponded with each letter? You know, something that makes me realize why I actually enjoy the franchise. So it's not necessarily an anagram where Harvest Moon, turns into this perfect sentence or anything like that, but it is each letter of Harvest Moon represented by how I feel. So, starting with the letter H, honesty. The game Harvest Moon, as a whole, they all require you to do one thing, which is pretty much whatever you want. So you have to be honest with yourself about the choices that you make. This is not a game such as Super Mario 64 where you go out and you just do whatever. You just have silly fun with it. This makes you think about honest choices within yourself. What am I going to do next? It's just like real life. A, atmosphere. The atmosphere is always amazing. There's just something about having the simple town that makes me feel happy and sad at the same time. It's not the city, it's a place where you settle down, you have all this greenery around you, the change of the seasons. Every little detail about the atmosphere speaks to me on some level, which I think is something that a lot of games don't manage to capture. Or if they do, you're not sucked into it as much. It's something about having the small life that makes you appreciate it even more. R, rough. This game can be rough at times. I mean, seriously, when you are planning your crop schedule and trying to also woo the girl or girls of your choice, you're trying to also balance out friendships and figuring out what you're going to do next all the time in all these different elements. It can be rough. It makes you make sacrifices. You want to do one thing today, but you won't have enough time to do something else. And there is just something about that I appreciate. It's rough, but at the same time, you look back, and once again, you're honest with yourself. You say, okay, I made that choice back then. I can't and I wouldn't take it back. That's how it is. So let's move on to V, victory. The lack of victory in this game is, I think, phenomenal. When you play a normal game, you have an end point, you have an objective. In some of the Harvest Moon games, there essentially is no real end. In fact, in most of them, there isn't. Taking Harvest Moon 64, that game sort of has an end where most people just stop playing, which is when, after 2 years, your father comes back to see how well you've done on the farm. Some of the other games, you watch your child grow up. You have all these things that continue on, but there's no real, when you get to the end, you say that I am victorious. You just look back at the hard work that you did, and you see how far you've come. And every time that you play the game, you're going to be at a different standing point, which I think is incredible. So let's move on to E, energy. The energy that is just run throughout this game is amazing. And then there's also literal energy. You have to balance out what you can do in a day. For example, in Harvest Moon 64, that game has power berries that give you more energy. And the thing about having more energy means you can do more tasks on your farm. Physical, hard work, labor. So you have to balance out what you're going to be able to do. You want to have all these rows of crops. Do you even have the energy to do it and still do these other things on the side that you want to do? Can you fulfill your plans? You have to balance it, and without having an energy gauge, you just have to know. You have to be used to what your own character can do, just like in real life. It's a balance that I find is incredible and is done very well. Next is S for sharing. The game teaches you to share with others. Now, a lot of us already know to do that, but sometimes we honestly forget. Giving gifts not just to the girls that you like in the game, but also the other townsfolk, knowing what they actually enjoy. Some of them might have recipes, go into their house, find out what the recipe is that they like, make it for them. It makes you have this deeper connection with all the characters, even though these are all just lines of text. There's just something so magnificent about the simplicity of sharing an item with someone in the game just to see what they would say, see how they would react, almost as if every day was Christmas time, which I think is amazing. Now let's go into T for time. Just like how I was saying with R for rough, is T for time is time management and time spent in the game. A day only lasts mere minutes. Compared to something like Animal Crossing, it is not real time. You have to come up with this balance. And finding that right balance can be difficult. The time that you spend with all the different characters could be time away from you getting valuable money for more crops, so you could buy more expansions, so you could do more. But then, at the same time, pun intended, you begin to miss those people. And you say, oh, well, I feel bad because it's been a couple days since I've spoken to someone, or even weeks. It is just, time gets in your head, and you literally can lose track of time while playing this game. It is something that in all levels is incredible to wrap your head around, and I still have a difficult time doing such. Now let's move on to Moon. So let's start with M, money. Everything about this game teaches you about financial responsibility when it comes to growing your crops, which is a hefty portion of the game. You start out with just a little bit of money, and you are told to go ahead and make that into more money. Now, while there's other ways that they could expand upon to make you spend money and teach you more about financial, responsibilities, because essentially when you start, you have a little bit, and then you're constantly growing. But then after a while, you're like, well, I have this money. Do I want to spend it on expansion now? And then if you spend the money on an expansion the moment you get the money, you'll be out of money to do your crops. So you have to think, well, how far ahead should I necessarily be before I buy the expansion so I can continue making money at the same rate I'm at? So there is some micromanaging that you have to do with your finances in the game. And there's other ways that money plays a role as well, depending on which game you are referring to. That's definitely a very, very fun and important element to me, mixed in with everything that I've listed beforehand. Next is O, for open. When people think of an open world game, what do you think of? I first thought of Skyrim. Then there's also Fallout, and then you have all these MMOs. Well, right now, I'm actually in the middle of playing Harvest Moon 64. That one is my all-time favorite, and for such a small game, it is very open world. Despite only having about 6, maybe 7 maps in the entire game, you are open to pretty much do whatever you want every day. Are you going to talk to all the villagers? Are you going to give gifts to everyone? Are you going to grow crops and be solitary? Are you going to buy a sheep, or are you going to go ahead and take care of your dog? Are you even going to feed him? You are open to do whatever it is that you want. And there's no repercussions. It's up to you to define the story that you are involved in. Which, that is what a real open world game is all about. You make the choices, and they will be reflected on how the townsfolk treat you, how much money you have. It all comes down to what you do, which once again is amazing. Time for the second O in Moon, occupation. It teaches you the occupation of a farmer to a very limited spectrum, but it does give you an occupation which is the same every time. You are a farmer. You have to take care of your crops. You have to figure out what is the best time and ways to plant them. In this occupation, you have to manage money, time, energy, all the things that are listed beforehand. All come down to how you are in your occupation. But since you run your occupation, and you don't have a food or hunger meter, you are free to run it how you want. You are your own boss, and you decide how successful you will be. That is beautiful. Now last is N for new. Every game, and even if it's the same game, every time you play that game, it's a brand new experience. For example, when I played Harvest Moon Tree of Tranquility back in the day, versus when I was thinking about playing it just a little while from now, those two experiences are going to be drastically different. Depending on how you play, it could be that you have new knowledge. For example, I now know some of the landscape, but it's been a long time. It's almost like playing a whole brand new game. It's almost like I never played Tree of Tranquility to begin with. But when I play Harvest Moon 64, I've played that game so many times, I know a lot of routine. I know how the maps look. I know where the villagers can be. I know a lot more than when I did the first time, meaning I'm going to be more successful this time around, hopefully. Every time that you play, it's going to be a new experience, new villagers, new tales to tell. Everything about that is once again beautiful and amazing. Now I know some of these other games capture that, but there's just something fantastic about thinking about having the same concept of a game come out so many times, but yet every single time it's different. And it's different enough, and then you get lost in these worlds based upon the analogies or anagrams, whatever it's called, of what I just listed: honesty, atmosphere, rough, victory, energy, sharing, time, money, open, occupation, and new. They all come down to create something that is magnificent, which is why Harvest Moon is so dear to me. There really isn't much more I could say about it. It's not a review of the franchise. It's not really necessarily an opinion. It is, but it's, I think, how a lot of us feel. And when trying to explain Harvest Moon to someone else, I would say show them this video. Or describe some of these things. Remember this anagram, or whatever it is, and try to explain that to them. That it's not as simple as just saying, oh, we're going to grow crops, we're going to make some money, and we're going to make some friends along the way. On the outside, it looks that simple. But when you really get down to it, there is something that is just so magnificent that I don't think can be explained in enough words for someone to understand without trying it for themselves. So, I am Link584, and I'm going to fade out like I always do. We're going to have the wall of discussion where I'm going to annotate your viewpoints and opinions and comments onto that wall at the end of the video here. So please leave a comment below letting us know how you feel. And you know what? I think that this has been an interesting conversation.